The next speaker is Victor Koppe. He's a member and partner of the Beuler advocaten firm in the Netherlands. He studied international law and international relations in the Netherlands and in the United States. He is specialized in political extradition matters, terrorism cases. Victor Koppe dealt with a number of high-profile terrorism cases, including the PKK, the Kurdish party, the ETA, the Basque Freedom Independence Movement, Ansar al-Islam, among which that of various people accused of membership of the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, the LTTE, also known as the Tamil Tigers.
As I think most of you, it was only 2 years ago that I had a sort of vague knowledge about the conflict that had been going on for years and years on Sri Lanka. But that all changed, I think, exactly 2 years ago this month, when in Holland a large number of people, Tamils, were arrested on accusation of all kinds of criminal behavior. And like I said, the accusations against most Tamils was their alleged membership of the LTTE and financing the LTTE in their fight in Sri Lanka. The Tamils are a different people from the Sinhalese majority on Sri Lanka. They live mostly in the north and eastern part of Sri Lanka. They have their own language. They speak Tamil as opposed to the majority, which speaks Sinhalese. They have also their own religion. The Sinhalese majority is Buddhist, and the Tamil-speaking people, they are Hindus. After the decolonization, after the British left, immediately things started to change on Sri Lanka. And unfortunately, not to the benefit of the Tamil minority on Sri Lanka. And protests started to emerge in the beginning of the 70s, but that really had no effect whatsoever. So the civil disobedience in that period was largely without any real effect. And then in 1976, it was that the LTTE, the Liberation Tigers for Tamil Eelam, was founded. The crackdown which soon followed was, if you really read those reports back in those days, quite shocking. In 79, the Sinhalese authorities issued the so-called Prevention of Terrorism Act, and there were NGOs comparing that particular act and the way it was worked out. They compared it to the South African anti-terrorism activities back in the days against the ANC. The LTTE actually, because of this, became stronger and stronger, and in '83 really started an armed conflict, really started to engage militarily with the Sinhalese authorities. This armed conflict, this fight against the dominance lasted from '83 till 2009. So that's almost 26 years when there was really fierce fighting going on. After that tsunami in 2004 and the devastating results of it, I think the conflict deteriorated in such a way that the Sinhalese forces gained more and more the upper hand, and in 2009, 18th of May 2009, led to the ultimate defeat of the LTTE. That's a very important date. The leader, Prabhakaran, and many other military commanders were beaten officially and finally by the Sinhalese government. Now, 2009, that's only 3 years ago, was a very important date in this struggle. But already 3 years earlier, it was the EU who had decided that it was important to sort of force the peace process in a certain way to put the LTTE on the list of terrorist organizations. As you know, the EU founded this list of terrorist organizations in the beginning of 2002, after 9/11. Many organizations which really had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda were put on this list. For instance, the PKK was put on this list, the ETA was put on this list, and many other organizations which really had nothing to do with the conflict between the US and Al-Qaeda on the other hand. Interestingly enough, 1 year ago, a WikiLeaks cable leaked, and from that WikiLeaks cable, you can determine what the process was, how the LTTE was put on the list. It was, if you see that cable, you can see that one ambassador is saying to the other ambassador that France and Italy really didn't want the LTTE on the list. They felt the pressure from the US to put the LTTE on the list. And they didn't really want to be pushed by the politics of the US. The Nordic countries like Norway and Denmark and Sweden, they really didn't want to have the LTTE on the list because of substantive grounds. They really thought, and in my opinion rightfully so, that the right for self-determination of the LTTE is a proper right and should not be regarded in the black and white difference for terrorist organizations. You see the differences, and also the way this procedure is going is really without any rules. It's purely a political decision of the EU to put the LTTE on the list. There was no legal framework. There's no court. There are no judges who give their opinion or who advise on the way that such an organization should be placed on that list. Right now we are in 2012, and we have come actually a long way. Let me take you first back to the situation in the Netherlands. As I told you 2 years ago, quite some people were arrested, and 5 of them were brought to court as being charged with being members of the LTTE. And interestingly enough, and that is, I think, really a breakthrough, the Dutch court deciding on the issue ruled that the LTTE cannot be considered a terrorist organization, that the LTTE is in fact a party, a legitimate party to an armed conflict, is in fact a legitimate party fighting for self-determination. And by saying this, the court is really saying that the LTTE should, from a legal perspective, never be put on the list. And that's, of course, very interesting, because I think that is the first time ever that a court decided and ruled that a party to a conflict can have a right to self-determination and should not be automatically considered a terrorist organization just because the politics is saying that, just because countries are saying that.